I am 92 years old now, and I can feel the days becoming shorter in a way that has nothing to do with the sun. There is not much left ahead of me, I know that. I don't say it with fear anymore, just with a kind of quiet understanding. When people sit with me, they ask what my life was like. They expect something large, something impressive. I can see it in their faces. But when I look back, what I see is not large. It is made of small things, small choices, small silences, small moments that I thought did not matter very much at the time. I had a full life, that is what people would say. A husband, children, a house that was never empty, responsibilities that filled every hour. From the outside, it would have looked complete, and in many ways it was. But there are parts of it that I understand only now. When I was married, I was still very young. I didn't question much. You were told what life would be, and you stepped into it. I entered my husband's home quietly. I remember the first morning. I woke up before everyone else. Not because anyone asked me to, but because I did not want to be seen as lazy. The house felt unfamiliar. Even the light coming through the window looked different. My mother-in-law was already awake. She didn't say much to me. She didn't need to. I watched her instead. The way she folded things. The way she moved through the kitchen without wasting a step. The way she expected things to be done without explaining them. It took me time to understand her. In the beginning, I made mistakes, small ones. Too much salt, clothes not folded the right way, tea that was not strong enough. Nothing serious, but enough to be noticed. I remember standing there sometimes, listening to her corrections, feeling something rise in my chest. Not anger exactly, something quieter, something I did not have words for then. I could have argued. I thought about it many times, but I didn't. Not because I was patient by nature, I was not. I think I was afraid of making things worse. So I adjusted, little by little. I learned her ways. I learned when to speak and when not to. Over time, the house became easier to move through. Not because it changed, but because I did. Years passed like that, quietly. My husband worked long hours. He was not unkind, just occupied. There was always something that needed his attention outside the home. Inside the home, there was always something that needed mine. When my children were born, the house changed again. It became louder, messier, warmer. I remember holding my first child and thinking that everything would be different now. And it was, but not in the ways I expected. Life did not slow down. It became faster. There was always something to do, cooking, cleaning, feeding, teaching. Days started early and ended late. I told myself I would rest when things settled. They never really did. My children grew up watching everything. I didn't think about that at the time. You don't think about being watched when you are just trying to get through the day. But they saw more than I realized. They saw how I spoke to their grandmother. They saw how I stayed quiet when I could have spoken. They saw how I kept things together. I did not sit them down and explain anything. There was no time for that. Life itself was doing the explaining. As they grew older, I noticed small things. They didn't argue much with each other. They helped without being asked. They were careful with their words in a way I had never taught them directly. At the time, I felt a kind of quiet satisfaction, like something was going right. But I did not stop to think about what it was costing. That is something you understand later. When my children reached the age of marriage, I felt a different kind of weight. Not fear exactly, more like uncertainty. I had spent so many years holding things together. I wondered if it would continue once they stepped into their own lives. My sons brought their wives into the home. My daughters left to build their own homes. The house changed again. It became quieter in some ways, louder in others. I watched everything closely, even when I pretended not to. I paid attention to how my daughters-in-law were treated, to how my sons spoke to them, to how the rhythm of the house adjusted. There were moments of tension, of course there were. No house is free of that. But there was also something else, a kind of understanding that had not been there when I first arrived as a young bride. Things were not perfect, but they were softer. Years continued to pass, faster than before. One day I was busy with everything, and the next I was no longer needed in the same way. That is something no one prepares you for. When your hands are always full, you do not imagine them becoming empty. My children had their own routines now, their own responsibilities, their own lives. They visited, they called, but it was not the same. It was not supposed to be the same. I understood that. Still, there were moments, small ones, when the house felt too quiet, when I would sit and listen, almost expecting to hear something that was no longer there. I would tell myself, this is how life goes. Children grow, they leave, they return in smaller ways. You accept it, you must. Then came the losses, not all at once, one by one. My mother-in-law passed away first. She had become softer in her later years. We had reached a place of understanding. There were things we never said to each other, but there was no anger left, just a kind of quiet respect. When she was gone, the house felt different, as if something that had always been there, even in silence, had disappeared. My husband followed some years later. His absence was not loud. It was in the small things, the empty chair, the unused cup, the lack of footsteps at certain times of the day. I had spent so many years adjusting around him. I did not know how to exist without that. Time continued. It does not stop for anyone. Now I sit here, at 92, in the same kind of room I once moved through without thinking. There are photographs around me, faces from different times. Some of them are no longer here, some are far away. Some visit when they can. I am not alone. But I understand loneliness now in a way I did not before. It is not always about being physically alone. It is about the distance between what was and what is. There are things I cannot go back and change. That is the part that stays with you. Not the big decisions, the small ones, the times I said, I will sit with them later, the conversations I postponed, the moments I hurried through because there was something else to do. I thought there would always be more time. There is always that thought. You don't say it out loud, but it is there. I will do it tomorrow, next week, when things are less busy. But life does not slow down when you ask it to. It moves in one direction. And one day you realize that the time you thought you had is no longer there. I do not say this with regret in the way people expect. It is not a sharp pain. It is something quieter, a kind of understanding that settles in. I look at my children now, at their children, at the way they speak to each other, at the way they come together when it matters. And I see something that makes sense to me, something that feels complete. Whatever I did, in all those small, unnoticed moments, it became something. It continued. That is enough. If you are listening to me, I will not tell you what to do. I do not have that kind of certainty. I only know what I did not understand at the time, that the ordinary moments are not small, that the things you delay do not wait for you, that the people in your house, sitting near you, moving around you, they are not always going to be there. You know this. Everyone knows this. But knowing it and feeling it are not the same. I am 92 now. There is not much left ahead. I can feel that in simple ways, in how tired I become, in how the days pass more quietly. I am not afraid of it. I have seen enough to understand that everything comes to an end. I sit here and sometimes I close my eyes, not to sleep, just to remember. The sounds, the voices, the small movements of a life that kept going without stopping. It is all still there, somewhere, just not here anymore. And that is all right. That is how it is supposed to be.